Well, thank you for having me, Mickey.
Welcome to another NRBBA Small Biz Live. I'm Mickey Marraffino with Sam Kartounian of Beach Cities Watch Company and Tic Time at South Bay Galleria. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you, Mickey. Thanks for having us.
It's great to see you today. And I noticed when we were getting started that you have some, what do you call it, wrist candy
I
on
do.
your wrist?
Sure, my pose was correctly so that I get the watches in the video. So
So
this here,
I've got a couple on my wrist too. These are like my favorite
at you.
watches that I got from you, a Michael Kors and of course a Mickey Mouse Disney watch, which is always my fave.
You outdid me. You did two on one wrist. I got one on each wrist.
Oh
So
yeah, so I don't have anything. I've got a naked wrist, so I need a little more bling, right?
that's two words that we don't like in the watch industry, naked wrist.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in the watch business.
Well, very good. Watches have been part of my life. So it's funny that I think the promo that you had for interview, it said that I was born with a watch in my mouth.
A
And we
watch on your wrist.
watch on my wrist. And I have a picture of me in my Spider-Man pajamas at 5 years old on this old 1970s couch with a Casio digital watch hanging out of my mouth because I was chewing on the rubber strap and falling asleep on the couch. And my wife had surprised me on my 30th birthday, put that in a frame and given it to me. So watches have
Oh,
been DNA my entire life. So ever since I can remember, my dad was in the watch business, our family was in the entire watch business, and it's been part of our blood. So for how long I can remember, ever since the age of 5 or 6, if I could look over the watch counter, I was in the store working. So I would help out customers, be there spending time with my dad, and just learn about watches. So it's been part of my life, and it's a passion that I have.
yeah, actually, when I worked at South Bay Galleria, I met your dad first. He was the first person I met in the family because he opened Tic Time, right, at South Bay Galleria. That was,
I'm close to about 30 years now, I think, or 26, 27 years now.
yeah, a
So
long time ago.
it's
Yep.
been time.
And
So
then I met Victor, your brother, I think.
yeah,
And then you came along.
yes, yes.
And Victor had a shop at the Galleria, and then you took over Tic Time. Tell us the history of how that all worked.
We're all still in the watch business. It's one of those things that you can't get out. Once the watch business grabs you in, you can't leave. Like you said, first my dad opened a store, I think 25, 27 years ago in the Galleria, and then we found a need for a second store in the Galleria for higher end timepieces. So we opened a second location in the Galleria, and that's where my brother Victor started that location and ran it for a number of years. And then he decided he wanted to venture outside the mall and only work strictly on vintage watches and repair vintage products. So he has a location now in Manhattan Beach, right there next to the main library and the police station. So he's still in the South Bay doing vintage watches. And then I took over both locations in the Galleria. So we have the Beach Cities Watch Company, and then we have Tic Time in the Galleria. So
And you were responsible for the beautiful Tic Time store, right? You were really involved with the design.
correct. So the Tic Time store on the third level was redesigned back in 2011. And at that time, I was going through a transition where I was bored in the watch business. All I did was watches. And it came to the point where I was like, you know what? I want to step away from the watch industry, go back to school, get my MBA, and do something different outside the watch industry. So funny thing is, when I went back to school, trying to find this new passion that I had, my professors told me just stick to what you're doing and just do something completely different. Try something different in your watch industry, and you're going to succeed. And at that point, watch stores were mainly a service center where you come and get your watches repaired. Watches are a necessity that you're going to need on your wrist to tell time with. And the industry was starting to have a transition as well because people didn't really need watches anymore to tell time because they had their cell phones. What they needed was wrist accessories. And looking in the industry, nobody was really capitalizing on that wrist accessory perspective on watch stores. It was still the same service store. It was still the same watches being necessities with this old dinosauric watch concept of stores being. So I took advantage and really changed the design of the store around, the concept of the store around back in 2011 with our new business strategy being wrist accessories. So watches were no longer going to be a necessity for time on your wrist, but they were going to be an extension of your personality. So we came up with this statement of the hippest, trendiest wrist accessories, and that's what we're going to sell. We're going to be the only watch store that doesn't care about selling time, but we care about accessorizing your wrist. And it took off. In 2011, it really took off, and it was a big hit. And what was funny is that vendors started catching on to that same transition as well. But being that vendors are so big, it takes time for them to transition into being wrist accessories. But within those a couple of years, the entire industry changed and it became wrist accessories instead of being necessity for watches to keep time for. So it was a big success.
And you really kind of became the go-to for some of the more popular accessory brands, right?
We did. At that time, Michael Kors was just starting out. And it was funny, nobody had really heard about Michael Kors watches. When the sales rep first came in, I think it was like 2009 or 2010, they were doing fossil watches as well. And she said, I have this new line, it's called Michael Kors. It's kind of a risky investment. No one's really heard about it. It takes about, I think it was, you got to buy in for 14 watches at the time. And she was like, I don't know if you want to do 14 watches at the time. Thank goodness I did it, because a couple of years later, you couldn't even buy into it anymore. It became the hottest line that we had seen in the fashion industry, especially for women, because at that time, women didn't have a niche line that could accessorize on their wrists. So a small little investment of 14 watches at the time became this huge Michael Kors brand that we really profited from and had a great partnership with for many years, and still do. So.
Well, I think this tells you the story, right? Because this is a Michael Kors and this is Mickey Mouse, which is my personality, right? So I fall right into your hands basically with what you were trying to do with the watches.
Absolutely.
Cool. So tell me, you also expanded a little bit out of the wrist candy into the eye candy, right?
Sunglasses as well. So we carry brands such as Oakley and Ray-Ban and some smaller brands like Rain and Otis. And it was a no-brainer because people come in to accessorize their wrist and then next they want to accessorize their eyes, right? So it goes hand in hand. A majority of our business is still watches because that's our bread and butter and that's what I know and that's what I love. But to have just a complementary business of sunglasses was a no-brainer. We still do a number of these brands and people come in to see what we have for sunglasses. So we didn't want to just make it a one-stop watch store. We wanted to make it an accessory store or a wrist accessory store.
Well, and I think the fact that you're family owned, I know you know a lot of your customers. I know your wife, Karen. I don't know if she still works at the store every once in a while, but you know, everybody knows her because of her community involvement and the store, and you have two little ones. How old are your kids?
Karen's the backbone to everything that we do. I mean, she's so involved in the day-to-day running of our lives. If it wasn't for her, we wouldn't have the success that we're having. So Karen is the backbone. I have two little ones. Savannah is just turned 5, and Lucas is going to be 3 in September.
Wow.
So big, they're getting big, and we're getting older. So
yeah. And you're also very involved in the community. What do you do in the community?
We are very involved in the community. My wife was part of the chamber. I sat on the chamber board, part of the government relation committee at one time. I was a member of the NRBBA, and I was part of the Rotary, and very involved in the community. We've stepped away a little bit after having kids because kids just take up so much of your time. But to get a little bit older, we want to get back into being as active as we were.
Well, and I know just from my involvement with the chamber and some of the other groups, the NRBBA, it seems like you're the go-to because everybody knows you and you've built those relationships. You've created your own community for your business.
Absolutely. And I want to touch on what you say about being a small business, because being a small business, it has a lot of challenges, but it also has a versatility that when you see a shift in your industry, you're so small that you can shift immediately to what your industry wants. Whereas if you're a big corporation, yes, that has advantages as well. But when you're so big, you're like a Titanic. It takes forever for that big corporation to shift. So the biggest advantage that a small business has is to be able to shift to what your industry is shifting to. And I always say the best way you can succeed is give your people what they want, right? Your customers will always tell you what they want. It's up to you to listen and to make sure that you give them what you want. So we had this great plan of having a wrist accessory store and building a great wrist accessory brand. And it succeeded because we listened to what our customers are looking for and what they're wanting for. But with anything, always have challenges, right? Who was that? Mike Tyson?
COVID-19.
Yeah, Mike Tyson said, you always have a plan until you get punched in the face. So everybody always has a plan. And our industry specific, biggest challenges that we had is when a 8,000-pound gorilla like Apple decides to join your watch industry and make an Apple Watch.
Right.
2015, I think it was 2014 or 2015, Apple decided to come up with Apple Watch. And it was devastating to the watch industry because none of us knew how to react to it and how much of a hit it was going to take on our industry. And it was a sizable hit. You had these consumers who were used to wearing real watches now shifting and wearing Apple Watches, which us in the industry, we don't think that real watches, Apple Watches are not real watches. You got to have a real watch on. So for a number of years, we had a downturn in the industry. But with everything, there's an opportunity, right? And with the Apple Watch, there was a significant opportunity for us because the younger generation wasn't wearing watches when the Apple Watch launched. So what they did, they put the Apple Watch on their wrist first, and they saw that, oh, I can actually have wrist space. And maybe before I buy my first Apple Watch, I wear it for a certain period of time. Now I want to grow up and have a real watch. So after a couple of years, the watch industry really took off again, where this younger generation who was never wearing watches started to invest back into watches. And now you have younger generation becoming collectors of watches and really wearing watches and into watches because of the Apple Watch. So it's funny how a big threat in our industry turned into a really big opportunity in our industry.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. Tell me about another threat that
Did I lose you there for a second?
So we've had a big shift with COVID-19. The Galleria closed for a little while. I know it's reopened now. But tell me, what is it like if I want to go into the store and try on watches, try on sunglasses? How does that work now?
It's a challenge. It's a big challenge. COVID definitely changed a lot of things. It accelerated our online portion of our business. I think it was 2015 or 2016 when Nordstrom decided to pull out of the Galleria. Again, that was another big threat to us. How are we going to react? Are we just going to fold up in the Galleria and walk away because we have Nordstrom leaving? Or are we going to take it as an opportunity and start a new revenue stream? And I always say desperation is the mother of all innovation. So when you're desperate, your back is against the wall, we decided to innovate. And I believe it was 2016 that we decided that we're going to go online. We started our online site. We started promoting on Amazon and all these different various platforms, and it really took off. So we have two parts of our business. We have the online portion of our business, which we started back in 2016, and we have the brick and mortar part of our business. They go hand in hand. And we were doing well, but COVID hit, and we saw a big spike in our online business. But what changed is our brick and mortar business really slowed down because we had to close the stores. And now we see a big shift in our or our brick and mortar business where it's mainly just service. People are coming in to get their watches repaired, not necessarily sales of watches. That's being done online, but service. People can't get the service they want online. So they're coming in to repair their watches, get their batteries fixed, sized in the store. So we're taking a lot of precautions. Of course, we have our masks on, we wear gloves when we're handling the watches, and we're really sanitize all the watches that they're coming in. But my point being, any industry is going to change. It's just up to you to adapt to your changes and make sure that you give the people what they want and always be innovative in what you're doing.
Great. And so what do you see as the future for watches?
I think watches it has a very bright future. Unfortunately, the industry is going to consolidate due to COVID-19. Our industry is maybe 95% brick and mortar and only 5% online. Most stores are service stores that you walk into and get your watches serviced, and there's not many online presence. Due to COVID-19, I think a lot of those little brick and mortar stores are going to go away and the industry is going to consolidate. But with that, it's also going to strengthen the industry. Whoever remains in the watch industry, they're going to be extremely innovative and they're going to come up with new designs. Watches aren't going to go away. People need an escape from life and out of reality. And the way that they get that escape is through watches. There's a huge culture, if you look at online, for watch clubs. Various different brands, like the shirt I'm wearing right now is Oris watches. They have a watch,
Okay.
thousands of members on Facebook. And there's many various different clubs out there. There's definitely a passion for watches. What's going to be a real challenge now is that vendors such as Oris or Tag Heuer or many other brands are starting to go direct to the consumer, and they're cutting out the middlemen like us.
Mm-hmm.
How do we reach a compromise or reach some sort of business to not get cut out and not have the vendors go direct? And I think that all leads back to our local community, being involved in the community so that our local customers come back to us. And we really, as a small Beach Cities watch company, bring value to that vendor where they say, okay, we really need Beach Cities Watch Company because they're bringing value into that community.
Exactly. I think, that's one of the things that you and your family have been really brilliant at. We talked about at the beginning of the show is creating that community to support your business. Nobody I know would go anywhere else to buy a watch. I mean, they would just come to you. And I remember during the Michael Kors craze, which I jumped on also, that everybody was like, oh, did you get this one? Did you see this new Michael Kors? Okay, so this is my ask. I want to figure out how to get these cool watches to count my steps.
There's new watches now that have the step counting in there, and there's some watches that have the GPS in there now that they'll actually tell you how long you've walked. So Casio has come out with this new watch called the Move, where it counts all your steps and it counts how long you've walked. So that's definitely the next generation. It's funny how you said what the future is, and yeah. That is the future, to actually have real looking watches, not an Apple looking watch, that can actually count your steps and count your fitness. So that is the next. Like you said.
Okay, I want it. Count me in.
There you go. Yeah.
So tell us where we can find you.
Well, where you can find us is Instagram, Beach Cities Watch Company, on our own website, beachcitieswatchco.com. We have an Amazon store set up, and of course, you can find us on Facebook as well. And of course, you can find us in the South Bay Galleria to come in for all your service needs or your watch needs. I think more than ever now, in this day and age, when my dad used to run the stores, you would just turn on the lights, open up your stores, and wait for customers to come in. This day and age, you can't do that anymore. If you're just going to wait for customers to come into your store and turn on your lights, you might as well just close up and go home, because that's not going to happen anymore. You have to really leverage all the resources that are out there, such as the Instagram and social media platforms, and really bring value to your customers so that your vendors see that you're bringing value and they want to stick with you. And that's been more important than ever. And if you're able to bring value and use all your resources and leverage, yes, retail is not dead. People say retail is dead. Retail is not dead. Retail is changing, and it's up to the retailer to be able to change with what's out there. So retail is not dead. I think retail is stronger than ever. People always want to buy things, so it's up to the retailer to be able to change the shift in the market.
Well, and when I go into your shop, I always have a great experience. And I think now more than ever, especially with the isolation that we've all had, community and walking in someplace and feeling like you're welcome and, suggesting, like some different things, even if you're coming in to get a new watch band or a battery, just to see what else is out there. And then also to see how you're keeping your shop safe for me, the guest, is really critical now too. So I'm really glad to hear everything you're doing.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else we need to know, Sam?
I think that's it. I mean, we've been in the gallery.
I know. I forgot one question. Celebrity sightings. Have you had any great celebrity sightings at your shop?
Well, yeah, back in the heyday of the Galleria, we used to have a lot of Lakers that would come by. I think Luke Walton, the former coach, Byron Scott would come by to the store, and most famously, Shaquille O'Neal came by one time. And it was funny. He walked into the store and there was a big crowd. I guess he had gone to the movies and there was a big crowd outside the store. So he walked into our store and he was looking for watches. He was complaining about how the store next door, which was a jersey store, they sold jerseys. He goes, this store doesn't have my size. He goes, I'm looking for a 6XL. How do they not have a 6XL in stock? Well, I said, it happened. So he came in looking for a watch with a leather strap. So he's a big guy. So he's got a big wrist. None of my leather watch band watches would fit on his wrist. I finally found one and I squeezed it on his wrist. I got it as tight as I could to finally get onto the last hole. And I go, look, Shaq, this is perfect. And I think the wrist, like the circulation got cut off. He's like, oh, are you sure this is my circulation's cut? I go, no, this is perfect. This is perfect. He didn't end up buying it, but it was the funniest thing. Me trying to put it on his wrist and telling him I look perfect. The nicest guy in the world. He posed for a picture with us, and my wife was there too. And it was a great experience. For me, seeing Shaq, I'm a huge basketball fan growing up with the Lakers. Seeing Shaq was like, it was a dream come true. So that was fun.
Especially in your store.
Especially in the store, in my environment. He's
Yeah.
on my playground. He's on my field, and I'm showing him watches. So it was cool.
That is pretty cool. Well, thank you so much, Sam. Thanks for everything you do for our community. Thanks for being the go-to wrist candy, watch and eye accessory shop where we can go and check out new things. And make sure you let us know when you've got some great new watches coming in that we can post on the NRBBA Instagram page.
You guys can always follow us on Instagram. So thank you. Thank you for having me, Mickey.
Okay, talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.